In a huge surprise for boxing fans, the much-anticipated fight between Gervonta "Tank" Davis and Conor Benn has been officially confirmed for November 2024. After months of speculation and talks that began to solidify earlier this year, the bout is set to be one of the biggest showdowns of the year. Eddie Hearn, who manages Conor Benn, has been tirelessly working to secure a massive fight for his fighter, while Gervonta Davis seemed to have other plans initially. It appears that both parties have now found common ground. While this bout, on the other hand, appears mammoth, doubts linger as to the pay-per-view returning numbers. Tank, who recently within a year took out Frank Martin in a fight considered the biggest of the year, is in a good place. Tank's explosive style and incredible knockout power have made him a star in the sport, and his name alone guarantees huge ticket sales and massive viewership. However, despite all his success, Davis is never fully content with his earnings, especially given the amount of money that a fight of this magnitude could generate.
A piece of them, because they feel like it's probably an easy kind of fight where I'm not worried about getting knocked out. I can take care of this guy. And, that's their prerogative. As far as the Tank fight in particular, I mean, you say an 8-figure payday, I say whoop-de-doo. Tank Davis can make 8 figures against anybody. He can probably make 8 figures against you or me.
Discussing the negotiations. He's never going to be happy, but the fight can generate huge pay-per-view numbers and gate sales. Given the high stakes of the situation, Davis is aware of the circumstances, and therefore, it is highly doubtful that he would agree to participate for any less than the highest fee. Davis, who has fought in front of sold-out arenas and broken PPV records, is expecting a similar purse to what he received in his fight against Ryan Garcia. His name brings in numbers, and he knows that he also knows that he has Garcia waiting for him for a potential rematch, and consequently, he is not ready to take anything that
fight gets made. Listen, I agree to fight anyone. Do you know what I mean? Ain't my concern. If 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 mil.
Conor Benn, son of British boxing legend Nigel Benn, is equally determined to make a name for himself. With an impressive record, Benn has been climbing the ranks of the welterweight division. Known for his aggressive style and relentless pressure, Benn has captured the attention of boxing fans worldwide. Now, with a fight against Gervonta Davis on the horizon, he has the chance to become a household name.
Straight back into where I belong. I ain't gone nowhere. I've still been here, so throw me straight in. As I mentioned, anyone top five, convinced. So it's just about making these fights happen.
But for Benn, this fight is more than just a payday. It's a statement. He's been chasing big fights for the last few years, and now, with a chance to face one of the biggest names in the sport, he's ready to show the world that he belongs among the elite. Other fight opportunities have come Benn's way as well, with the possibility of contests with Chris Eubank Jr., Mario Barrios, and even Manny Pacquiao being mentioned. But none of those names carried the same weight as Gervonta Davis.
Hit list has got to be Eubank, Barrios, Haney,
Eddie Hearn has been vocal about Benn's desire to fight someone of Davis's caliber. Conor is very keen to lock in his next fight as soon as possible, Hearn said. We're talking, and we'll see where it gets to, but I promise you this, Conor Benn will be in a massive fight next. Hearn has taken the mantle of the most important person in the arrangements for this fight. Hearn, while being one of the leading promoters in the sport, is aware on the tactics of making the biggest fights possible, altering people's schedules, and planning up to the last minute. He has pushed for Benn to get the fight he has worked so hard for, and after several months of hard work, it appears that the stars have finally aligned. Hearn has been particularly focused on getting Benn back into the ring after a long layoff. Benn hasn't had any action since his last bout against Chris Van Heerden, and Hearn has been determined to get him a high-profile opponent for his return. While a potential fight with Chris Eubank Jr. was on the table, it seemed too difficult to arrange. Doubtless, Eubank has other fights in sight, and the negotiation for that bout was taking too long for Hearn's liking. Chris Eubank Jr. was always a possibility, but it just wasn't coming together the way we wanted, Hearn explained. There's been too much back and forth, and Conor wants to fight now. He is not interested in waiting around for months while we try to make something happen. With Eubank Jr. out of the picture, Hearn turned his attention to Gervonta Davis, a fighter whose star power could catapult Benn into the limelight. Hearn knew it wouldn't be easy to make the fight happen, but he was confident that it would be worth the effort. One of the key issues in the negotiations was, of course, money. Gervonta Davis is coming off a mega fight with Ryan Garcia, where both fighters earned massive purses. Davis is predicting that he will get an amount comparable to that for this particular fight, although it is not on the same scale as that of Garcia. Eddie Hearn is aware that if he is to get Davis for this fight, he has no option but to fork out some serious dollars. If Hearn wants the Tank fight, he will need to offer him a lot of money, which could even exceed the revenue of the fight itself. One analyst explained to Tank will want the same kind of payday he got for the Garcia fight, even though this fight isn't as big in terms of mainstream appeal. Hearn is quite self-assured about the profit margins of the showdown regardless of the financial struggles faced. This fight is going to generate huge pay-per-view sales, Hearn said. Tank knows that, and we're prepared to make sure he gets what he's worth. In a recent interview, Davis made it clear that he doesn't see Benn as a threat. He's a good fighter, but he's not on my level, Davis said. I've fought the best, and I've beaten the best. This fight is just another stepping stone for me. Nevertheless, the father of Benn, Nigel Benn, did not approach the concept of this fight in a direct manner. The fact that Nigel Benn did not seem concerned about Conor's fight with Gervonta Davis led to a lot of skepticism in the boxing circle. As a legend in his own right, Nigel Benn's opinions carry weight, and his comments about Conor's next opponents reflect a cautious yet strategic approach. When asked about his son's future, Gervonta Davis was noticeably absent from the list of potential matchups mentioned by the elder Benn, which included names like Mario Barrios, Chris Eubank Jr., and Liam Smith. This omission led to speculation about whether Nigel was purposefully steering Conor away from the danger that Tank Davis represents for an opponent such as Conor, who has fought his battles in the ring and emerged victorious. The next bout could well shape the rest of her career. His father being such active a participant in any of these decisions is no big surprise. Yet when Gervonta Davis was announced as Conor's confirmed opponent for November, fans couldn't help but wonder why Nigel Benn seemed skeptical at first. One of the most significant factors behind Nigel Benn's hesitation could have been the weight difference between the two fighters. Conor Benn is a rising welterweight who has shown incredible strength, swiftness, and technique within the division. On the contrary, Gervonta Davis is a lightweight champion who spent the better part of her career fighting and defeating smaller foes. While Davis has the power to knock out opponents even at higher weights, moving up to fight a naturally bigger fighter like Conor Benn presents an entirely different challenge. For Nigel, the concern may have been about whether Tank could handle that size disparity. Sure, Davis has immense knockout power, but fighting a larger, stronger opponent like Conor presents new variables. Being a fighter and a champion in different weight classes on his own, it is safe to say that Nigel is aware of the intricacies involved in such pairings. His wariness might be rooted in the fact that this fight carries immense risk for both men, but especially for his son. Beyond the weight difference, the clash of fighting styles is another concern that may have crossed Nigel Benn's mind. Gervonta Davis is known for his explosive knockout power and his ability to quickly close the distance. Some of the very best in the sport can be compared to the counter-punching repertoire of even the great champions in terms of his ability to go on the offensive while on the defensive, like a predator patiently waiting for its prey to falter before striking with brutal effectiveness. Meanwhile, Conor Benn is an aggressive fighter who likes to press the action and impose his will on his opponents. Nigel Benn likely recognized that Conor's aggressive style could play directly into Davis's strengths, which may be why he was hesitant to endorse the fight. And while Conor is undoubtedly a talented and powerful boxer, fighting Gervonta Davis requires a different level of caution, strategy, and defense. Nigel, who has seen countless fights in his career, knows how dangerous it can be to engage recklessly with a fighter like Davis. Another reason Nigel Benn may have expressed skepticism is his desire to protect his son's career trajectory. Conor Benn is on the rise with an undefeated record and plenty of momentum. Losing to Gervonta Davis, especially if the fight ends in a KO, could throw that momentum off and set backward years of effort. Nigel Benn knows all too well the importance of building a career carefully and strategically. He likely wants Conor to face opponents that will both challenge him and elevate his status without putting him in undue danger. In the interview, Nigel mentioned names like Mario Barrios and Chris Eubank Jr., both of whom are formidable opponents, but perhaps less risky than Gervonta Davis at this stage of Conor's career. However, as appealing as the Eubank Jr. bout would be, this is more within the comfort zone of Conor, who remains more or less restricted to the British boxing fold. Gervonta Davis, on the other hand, represents a global superstar with a massive following, making it a much more dangerous and potentially career-defining fight. Thus, it may be concluded that the lineal heavyweight champion's fearsome reputation for being a knockout artist could have influenced Nigel's reluctance. Davis has an aura of invincibility surrounding him, having knocked out most of his opponents with relative ease. His ability to end a fight with a single punch makes him one of the most feared boxers in the sport today. As a father, Nigel Benn's priority is to protect his son, and the prospect of Conor stepping into the ring with someone as dangerous as Tank could understandably make any parent uneasy. In his interview, Nigel emphasized his belief that Conor was ready for fights with Eubank or Smith, but made no mention of Davis, suggesting that he might not feel Conor is quite ready for a challenge of that magnitude. However, considering that the bout between Gervonta and Conor has finally been announced, it is apparent that Conor Benn has belief in himself and does not fear taking the biggest risks in the sport, even after what his father has said. Despite Nigel Benn's initial skepticism, Conor Benn will now face Gervonta Davis in November in what promises to be one of the most anticipated fights of the year. It's understandable that Nigel has his thoughts on the matter, but what is evident is that Conor is set to leave a legacy and to prove he can face off with the highest order. Gervonta Davis has accepted Conor Benn's offer to fight him next, but whether this fight will actually happen is the big question on everyone's mind. For fans, it's almost hard to believe that Davis, who has been highly selective in picking his opponents, would choose to fight the unbeaten but relatively unknown British fighter Conor Benn. The announcement of this potential showdown has stirred a mix of excitement and doubt within the boxing community, especially when considering how this fight will be received, particularly by American audiences. The first hurdle that this fight must overcome is its marketability. While Gervonta Davis, with his perfect 29-0 record and explosive knockout power, is a massive draw in the US, Conor Benn is a different story. Despite holding an impressive winning record of 21-0, Benn is still not fighting in the test with relative ease and is a stranger to the American boxing audience. This raises a significant concern. Can the Davis versus Benn fight sell enough to justify the high purses both fighters are expecting? In order for a pay-per-view bout to be considered a success, it must attract a significant number of spectators, particularly in the United States, which is still regarded as one of the most lucrative markets for boxing. Tank has become a PPV star, particularly after his massive fight with Ryan Garcia earlier, but Conor Benn does not have the same level of exposure in the States. In fact, Benn's recent fights have mostly been in the UK or against lesser-known opponents. His lack of a solid fan base in the US could make it difficult to sell this fight on American soil. Moreover, the perception of Conor Benn as an untested fighter could work against the promotion. His unbeaten record, while impressive, doesn't carry the same weight as some of Davis's previous opponents. It is possible that the American fans may not see Benn as a credible threat to Davis, and that may affect their desire to purchase the fight. While the fight may struggle to sell in the US, there's always the possibility that the Saudis could step in to make it happen. In recent years, Saudi Arabia has increasingly involved itself in the sport of boxing, throwing large packages of money to host some of the well-known fights. If they see value in a Davis versus Benn showdown, the Saudis could easily bankroll the fight, ensuring both fighters get the payouts they want. In recent years, Saudi Arabia has hosted several blockbuster boxing events, and their involvement would certainly alleviate some of the financial concerns surrounding the fight. Nonetheless, even in the event that the Saudis finance the bout, there remains the issue of whether or not this fight will mesmerize and engage boxing followers around the world. While Davis is a massive name, the lack of familiarity with Benn could limit the excitement around the matchup, particularly compared to other potential fights involving Davis, such as a bout with Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson. Despite the doubt surrounding the fight, Gervonta Davis seems more than willing to step into the ring with Benn. When speaking about the tussle on online platforms, Davis replied with courage, "Sure, why not? Where would you like your butt whooping it then, my nigga?" His dismissive tone toward Benn suggests that Davis doesn't view the British fighter as a serious threat. Davis's attitude reflects the general consensus in the boxing world that Benn, while undefeated, is not on the same level as the Baltimore Star. Still, the fact that Davis has accepted the challenge shows that he's willing to take on all comers. After his victory over Ryan Garcia, Davis has advanced in his career to the stage where he is searching for bigger and famous adversaries to cement his position in the history. Benn, while not as high profile as some other fighters, still represents a new challenge for Davis. Especially given the size difference between the two. However, Davis's confidence in his ability to handle Benn is evident in his public statements, where he's essentially brushing off Benn's challenge as little more than a minor inconvenience. Never the one to avoid confrontation, Conor Benn took to Davis's challenge without any delays on social media. Benn responded by calling Davis a woman-beating munchkin from Oz and demanded that his promoter, Eddie Hearn, make the fight happen. Benn's response was brash and aggressive, fitting his persona as a fiery and confident fighter. However, some might argue that his response reflects a certain level of insecurity, especially after his less than impressive performance in his most recent fight against Peter Dobson. In that fight, Benn struggled to get past Dobson, eventually winning by unanimous decision, but not without showing some vulnerabilities. Although not a particularly formidable rival, Dobson managed to connect with several blows on Benn, which at times made him appear uneasy. Therefore, from the perspective of many boxing analysts, this match was indicative that Benn remains at a local circuit and is not yet a fighter of such caliber. That raises the question, is Benn actually prepared to go up against someone like Gervonta Davis? The most pertinent issue that still hangs over the situation is if this fight will in fact take place. On paper, it seems like a risky proposition for both fighters. For Davis, fighting Benn offers little in terms of legacy or financial gain, especially if the fight fails to generate significant interest in the US. For Benn, stepping into the ring with someone as dangerous as Gervonta Davis could prove disastrous for his undefeated record, especially given his recent performance against Dobson. Nonetheless, boxing is a sport where everything is possible, and as long as the right figures are offered up, there is a very good chance that the fight will indeed happen. Eddie Hearn, Benn's promoter, has a reputation for making big fights happen, and if he can negotiate a deal with Davis's team, this could become a reality. The Saudis, with their deep pockets, could also play a major role in making this fight a reality, as they've done with other major boxing events in recent years. If it happens, how do you think this will unfold? Comment down below your opinions, and also remember to like and subscribe to the channel for more.